Hello everyone, this is the first of a series of videos dedicated to calculations in chemistry. We are going to be looking at chemical equations and briefly how to balance them. And we're going to be looking at the symbols you can find in a chemical equations, from subscripts to superscripts to other symbols. That tells us more information about how the reaction is taking place. We're going to be also looking at the concept of mole and the links between moles and grams, and we'll be performing calculations changing between those two concepts. We'll also be looking at solubility and key principles related to why compounds are soluble and what happens with compounds when compounds dissolved, and at the concept of concentration and different concentration units, and we'll be performing quite a few calculations on different, using different concentration units that you're likely to find in other modules and your future careers. And finally, we are going to be looking at the concept of serial dilution, so how to obtain diluted solutions from a stock solution. And this is something you have already covered in the class, so hopefully it's not a new concept. As usual, these videos are not aimed at chemists, but at all of you that are doing chemistry as part of another degree. So if you have done chemistry before, for example, in foundation year, or you have done A-level chemistry, you might find, or a BTech, you might find that quite a few of the concepts I covered, you have covered in more detail, and that's fine. I'm happy to discuss things that I'm not covering with you if you're interested, but these are the key concepts I need you, it would be useful for you to know, moving on to future modules and future years in your degree. And as usual, if you have any questions, just drop me an email. So chemical reaction is the process that involves the conversion of one type of matter into another. It involves chemical changes, involves certain bonds being broken and others being formed. And a chemical equation is the way we have to represent that process of bonds of the different compounds changing, breaking bonds and making new compounds. You've got on the left hand side the reactants or reagent side, and on the right hand side the products. And you have a link between both of them, which is that arrow, the reaction arrow, which means whatever is on the left hand side, your reagents, for example A and B, or in the second example a real reaction, the hydrogen, the compound dihydrogen and the compound dioxygen react to form compounds C and D. Or in the case of the real reaction I've put as the second one, the compound, the molecule water. So the reaction I had in the previous slide, the hydrogen, dihydrogen and dioxygen to form water, can be visualized in this way. You have the compound H2 and you have two of them. So you put a 2 in the front. So the subscript, this little 2 here, tells you that that's the formula of the compound. That's the compound H2 made of 2 atoms of hydrogen. And the coefficient, which is the large number that you have in front, tells you that you have that compound twice. And then you have the other reagent or reactant, which is the compound O2. And again, you use the subscripts to tell you to tell your reader the composition of your compound. In this case, it's made of 2 atoms of oxygen. The chemical reaction happens, so the bonds are broken and reform, and all this is kind of represented by that arrow we have there. So the reaction takes place, and you have your product. And your product is the compound H2O, because it's made of 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. And you put the coefficient 2 because you form 2 molecules of water. These are just some symbols used in chemical reactions that is important that you get familiar with. The plus and the arrow you have already come across. You will also see these double-headed arrows. Sometimes you will see it like this with 2 arrows pointing to opposite directions. It means this is a reversible reaction. We will look more into what reversible reactions are in future sessions. Basically, it's a reaction that can go forward, but also goes backward. And it's stuck in something we call equilibrium. It goes as fast forward as it goes backward. Then you have arrows, you can have arrows next to the compounds, either pointing upwards or downwards. And when you have one pointing upwards, that means you form a gas and the gas leaves the reaction. So for example, here you will be making hydrogen gas, which will leave the reaction vessel. Or if it's pointing downwards, that means you are making a solid. It precipitates. You are producing a solid that comes off the reaction of the solution. Like for example, in this case, this is silver chloride. Then you have letters in brackets next to the compounds in many cases that tells you the state of the reagents and the products, if they are solids, liquids, gas, or if they are dissolved in water. And this is quite common when you're doing, well, in most of the chemistry we're going to be doing, you're going to see this aqueous. It means it's in this case it's an ion of sodium which is surrounded by molecules of water. And finally, you might see this symbol on top of an arrow like this, and it means you have to heat the reaction for the reaction to happen.